Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Focus on Greatness podcast. I am your host, Roche, and as always, it is an honor to be here with my Greatness tribe. Hey, listen, we have been on, I would say, an awesome conversation. We have been on this journey in this conversation dealing with these concepts of our system. The system really, when it breaks down to believing in ourselves. And so, throughout this time, and throughout these different conversations that we've been having over these past actually few months, we have really been diving in deeply, talking about these different forms of systems. We've dealt with our thought process, we've dealt with our emotional portion of our system, and how they both play a part in us believing in ourselves. And on throughout this month, we've been dealing with this context of just the believing portion in itself, and how at the end of the day, when we connect all of these parts together, how these pieces start to affect us believing in ourselves, the system that we have created in our lives and in our mind, that has affected us to be able to believe in ourselves. Now, one of the things that I believe is important when we're talking about this is understanding why. Understanding why do we feel like we need to have this conversation? Why do we need to deal with these different pieces that are affecting our belief system? Why do we need to start fighting against this system? And if I haven't shared it before, I'll share it now because I still believe it's important. Is this aspect of, if we do not believe in ourselves, then it's difficult for us to be able to break forth or break forward, to be able to achieve some of the goals and things that we want to achieve. Because at the end of the day, the core portion of all that we do has to do with, if you believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself that you can be able to do it, if you believe in yourself that you can be able to accomplish it, that is a large part of you being able to go forward and achieve the things that you want to achieve. Even when we're talking about in our relationship with God, there are certain things that we are responsible for in that relationship. And so, even when we're talking about the context, if we use this lane of love, the Bible talks about how we should be able to love one another. And it goes into a context of talking about how we should love our neighbors as ourselves. So, yes, we have a relationship to love God. God asks us to be able to love us with all of his heart, all of our hearts. And so, as we are looking at all of these components, again, us believing in ourselves, us loving on ourselves, has a major effect on how we do what we are wanting to do, what we need to achieve. That is a major part in this whole journey. And so, with that also being said, I want to be able to add this piece in. Us believing in ourselves, I believe, is a major part of the foundation of us being able to walk in the context of our greatness. Now, this is the Focus on Greatness podcast. I don't know if you knew that or not, if this is your first time listening to us, or you've been tuning in and you just forgot the name. But yes, Focus on Greatness, this is what we're doing. So, all the conversations that we are talking about, everything that we are lining up, is to be able to help us function and walk in this greatness in our lives. And us believing in ourselves is a major part of that. So, as I was preparing for this conversation and just really just thinking about just different things, one of the things that has been kind of like echoing in my heart or echoing in my mind through this conversation is realizing that sometimes one of the things that help that affect us, one of the pieces of the systems that has been this part that plays in us not believing in ourselves, is when we have failure, is when we have failed at doing something, or we tried to go after something but it did not go the way that we wanted. We tried to create something but it was not as successful as we thought it would be. We tried to go after this type of relationship but it did not happen the way that we thought that it should. It did not end the way that we wanted it to. It was what we would consider in our lives failures. These are moments and times where we have had failures in our lives. And sometimes these contexts of failures speak to us through our mental and through our emotional, that has now created this cultivated life of aware of saying, the reason why I can't believe that I can be able to achieve this, or the reason why I believe that I cannot be able to have this type of relationship or to be able to live this type of life, is the reason why I can't believe that I can do it. Now, I see other people doing it and I see other people being successful in it. But the reason why I feel I cannot do it is because when I tried, I failed. And so, what I want to be able to talk about in this conversation is understanding that it's a statement that we have all heard before. So, it's not a statement that is deep or complex, but I want to be able to give us some in this conversation, some thought processes that I believe will help us to look at this context differently. Failure is not final. I'm going to say that one more time. Failure is not final. The only way that failure becomes final is if we do not investigate why we failed. I'm not saying that you didn't. I'm not saying that you did not try. I'm not saying that you didn't plan. I'm not saying that you did not put the things together. I'm not saying that you did not go after it with everything that you had. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you are not capable of doing it. I recognize and I understand that you went after something that you wanted to be able to achieve. You gave it what you felt like was your best. And for whatever purpose and reason, you did not succeed in it. You did not have it or do it at the way that you thought it was going to be done. You didn't do it at the level it was supposed to be done. You gave it what you could and you failed. The reason why failure is not final is because failure only becomes final when you stop investigating it, when you stop looking at the reasons why this happened, when you stop asking the questions of why, or what could I have done differently, what is this for this specific space, for this specific situation, was I supposed to do this or this, like really start asking some detailed questions to realize not what made me fail, or did I fail, but more so asking the real questions: why did I fail? And what I believe that we will come to conclusion on, if we can ask these questions without dealing with or not being able to linger in the emotional state of it, if we can really boil down and get down to the nitty of the gritty and be able to find out this real answer: what in this situation, what scenarios happened, what didn't I know, what should I have done differently, or who should I have used, or what angle should I have came in. When we start asking the questions, we start to realize that the failure was not because we are not skilled enough. No, the failure is not because we are not smart enough. No, the failure is because there was something in the planning that we did not realize that was needed until after we failed. So the realization of it is if failure is not final, we can use this across the board. It might be a business idea. The business idea that I tried in doing X, Y, or Z did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. Well, let's ask the question: why? Was it because it was the wrong market? Was it because it was the wrong timing? Was it because the thing that you were trying to produce does not sell in the way that you tried to sell it? Like what reasoning why it did not succeed? Okay, I'm trying to grow my relationship. So I was doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, but why didn't it work? Did it not work because you wasn't consistent? Did it not work because of the idea that you wanted to do? It took two parties to be able to be successful in it, but both parties were not playing, was not doing their roles in making this successful. We have to start looking at all of the questions, because all of the questions allow us to be able to get to the answer that helps us to realize, one, that it's not me. It's not my mind. It's not my personality. It's not who I am. That I did not fail. It failed. The thing that I was trying to do failed does not say that I am a failure. No, no, no. It doesn't say I'm a failure. It says what I was trying to accomplish did not work. It failed. That's one. But here's the other part of it. In the understanding of this whole thing is it only failed now. That doesn't mean it won't work later. I'm going to say it again. It only failed now. It does not mean that it won't work later. So we can go through and look at different things. We can look at different people's story. We can look at past tense. We can look at comments, comments and statements and quotes. And people will tell you from past generations. They will tell you from lessons that they have learned that they might have failed at something many times, several times. But it does not mean again that what they were doing was wrong. No, or what they or them as a person, as an individual, were failures. No, what it says is they kept asking questions. They kept looking at it in different angles. They kept going on and on to realize, to find out, to see what was going on. What did I miss? What could I have done differently? And in this inquiry, what you start realizing and recognizing is, one, is there was missing pieces that you did not see because you didn't ask the questions. There was missing pieces and things that was in that you could have done differently. And when you start to realize these different pieces that you could have done differently, then you are able to try again. Because again, failure is only final when you stop asking the questions, when you quit. So why am I talking about this? Because sometimes, again, the reason why our belief in ourselves is affected is because we attribute the failures, the mess ups, the mistakes, we attribute them and say, I am a failure. I am a failure. We start to believe that we are the problem. I'm not saying that you're perfect. I'm not saying that in your relationship you've done everything correctly and you've done everything right. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that none of us is perfect. And I'm saying that the only way that we can be able to achieve the type of things that we want to achieve is we have to believe in ourselves, but we have to realize that in the journey of life that we are living in, that the things that we are trying to accomplish that we have never did before, that we have never went after before, that we have never probably even seen done correctly. Some people, you are literally creating something or doing something that you have never seen anybody else do before, not the way that you're trying to accomplish it. But because of this context of that, you feel like you might be a failure because of certain things that you have messed up in the past, or done wrong in the past, or have failed in the past. And because of those things, you have attributed to yourself that you are a failure. No, that's not the truth. You're not a failure. You're not a failure. Again, the only way that failure is final is if you make it final. You stop. You stop asking questions. You stop inquiring. You stop trying to look at it in different perspectives. The only way that it becomes final is you stop trying to develop it. You're not a failure. Now, what you did probably didn't work out the way you wanted. But the only way that it stopped, the only way that it stopped not working, the only way it stopped not progressing, the only way it stopped and never became successful is because you stopped. I remember there was a time in my marriage where every time around the same season, every year, we would go through this hard battle of where we was like, I don't want to do this no more. Every single time. I mean, January all the way, literally all the way up until about October, November. We'll have, normal relationship stuff, normal struggles, but majority of the time we will be good. Like happy and having these great moments. And so back to back for years, we were going through this cycle of where we felt like every season around November, December timeframe, there was this reoccurring thing of where we would be like, I don't want to do this no more. Every single year, every single year, every single time. And eventually it got to a point where I was like, we were both like, listen, we don't want to do it like this no more. Like we're tired of having to go through this cycle. So this is what we're gonna put some things in place so that we can break this thing because we're tired of having to struggle with the same thing every year. We love each other, we want to be with each other, blah blah blah. But we need to be able to break this cycle. So what we did was we started to try to do different things. We tried to, hey, why don't we try to start doing devotional together? Tried that. It lasted for about probably a couple months and then we stopped. Well, what if we tried to read this book together and then we'll talk about the book? That only lasted a few times. And then what we end up realizing is as we continue to go on, one of the major portions in our relationship that any relationship struggles with is sometimes it's not it's not the things that you think that is small in the relationship or more so what you think are big things that will help to make the changes. It was something small. Now it's important, don't get me wrong, but when you look at all the different pieces of this puzzle, you might not think that this was a big thing. And the big thing was communication. Now, being very honest, because of my personality and because of certain different things, and um, I wasn't excellent at communication at all. Because in my mind, we're talking all the time. What are we doing? Like we just talked. We talked about this, or we just talked about that. So like, what are we talking about now? Well, I mean, we're communicating, right? No, this was not communication. And the communication break between us was the thing that was affecting our relationship. And as we went through this journey of recognizing this and starting to strengthen it and becoming more strong in it and looking at different ways of, or for me, looking at reasons of why I don't communicate in these areas or why I'm not doing this or that. And it kept going and kept going and kept going till not per se I am successful in it. I ain't very, a whole lot strong in it, but I am a whole lot better than I was. But what I realized is at one point of my life, I felt like I sucked at communication. I was a failure when it came to communicating. I felt like when it came to communication, I would never succeed in that area because I suck at that. I'm a failure when it comes to talking. Specifically when it comes to talking about your emotional state or what someone has done to you or how you felt about a situation. I'm like I suck at this. But if I would not have continued to progress, if I would not have looked at it and start asking questions and looking for input and getting guidance, if I would have just stopped where I was, here's the thing, if I would have stopped trying to grow my communication, then I would have looked at probably down the line not having a successful marriage. And then my marriage now being another thing on my list of what internally my mind and my emotions has said I've always been a failure in. You're not good at relationships. You're not good at this. Like that negative component that we talked about before. So all of these contexts start to play a part. So I want to ask you this question. I want to ask you this question, and I believe it's very important to be able to have an answer for. How many things have been affected because you made your failure final? Because you stopped. Because see, let's break that what I just shared, my example of my own personal life, and I just use one area, but my example of one area of my life. If I wouldn't have worked on my communication, if I would have felt like I failed at that already, so I'm not going to succeed. I always fail. I never do good. Da 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 da. And going through that and blah 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 blah, and having this whole complaint about what I believe about my own self, that I'm not good at communicating. I suck at this and da da. If I kept going and kept going and kept going and never asked a question, never looked at different perspectives, and I just stated that this was final. I'm not good at this. Period. Then my marriage would have failed, which then would have affected my relationship or affected other people's relationship that they have with me, the perspective of how they look at me. Hear what I'm saying? Most importantly, though, for me, is it also would have affected my boys, because now they have to be raised not in the same house as their parents. Now they are affected by what I didn't grow in, what I felt like I was a failure in, what I never wanted to be able to look at and ask questions about and to develop and try again and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying until I can get to a point of success. So that's just one. That's an example of echo of how things are affected. Like one failure in you, one thing that you feel like is a failure, and you've made final. How it affects something else, and it affects something else, and it affects something else, and it can go generation to generation to generation. It can go from situation to situation to situation. It can go from thing to thing to thing. It can go from one business idea to another business idea, all because one scenario you have made final, all because you felt like you was a failure. And what I'm telling you is the only way that failure is final is if you stop, not if it doesn't work. Yes, it did not work. I get it. Sit back, reevaluate, and let's do it again, because you have the ability to do it. You have the skill to do it. I'm pushing this statement because I need you to realize that you can believe in yourself to achieve the things that you want to achieve. And the only thing that's stopping you from achieving the thing you want to achieve is you feeling like if you go after it, you're going to fail. There is things that I didn't want to do, but I was afraid that if I went after it, I would fail. Because why? I failed at something before. But in those things, I realize now I didn't go back and look at it. I didn't go back and reevaluate. I didn't go back and say, okay, what could I have done better, or what could I have done differently? Who could I have asked, or what input could I have got? What book could I have read? What thing could I have looked at to give me an example, at least some layout, so I can become successful in this area? No, I didn't do that in the past. But so because of that, it was affecting certain things that I wanted to accomplish in the future. So, because of those things, we have to ask ourselves these major questions. What thing is being affected because you have made that failure, that situation, that mess up, that scenario, you have made it final. You have not went back to the playing field. You have not went back and recreated it. You have not went back and had the conversation. You have not went and asked somebody for a different perspective or a different outlook. You have not done any homework or investigation in why that did not work for you. You have made it final. But there are things that are being affected because you are not creating and walking in and doing the thing that you are created and called to be able to do. So do not be afraid that you might fail. You might. It might not come all the way that you want. It might not even be the thing that it collapsed. It might just not be the way that you thought it was going to be. But you can't stop developing just because that didn't work the first time. You can't. You can't. It's impossible for you to think that we're going to succeed. It's impossible to think that you're going to grow. It's impossible to think that you're going to have a better marriage. It's impossible for you to think that you're going to be a better father. It's impossible for you to think that you're going to be a better businessman. It's impossible for you to think that you're going to be better at reading or at your finances or the thing that you're trying to create. It's impossible for you to do that and think that there's not going to be moments in time where it doesn't plan out or work out the way that you thought it was going to be. It's impossible. It's impossible. Because why? It certain things are out of your control. Okay, you plan to write a book and you wanted to be able to get the book out at a specific date. And you're doing everything you did. You've written everything out. You've talked to the right people. You've made these different connections. You've made the printing and you've done X, Y, or Z. You and have people spell check it and did the graphics for it. And you and done all of that work. And then something happens in between. What happens? Oh, it's something out of my control. The graphic designer didn't do it the way that I needed it to do. So now they push back the time. Or the person that I was trying to get it to be a distributor, now it's not working the way that I need. So now I got to find somebody else. It pushed back the time. It's out of your control. But it does not mean that what you are trying to achieve is not achievable. You can do it. You have the ability. You have the strength. You have the know-how. Know-how. You have all of the things that you need to accomplish the things that you're supposed to accomplish. Do not allow one mess up. Do not allow one situation. Do not allow one moment where it didn't go the way you wanted it. Do not allow this time where you tried and it failed. Do not allow the failed marriage that you had before or the failed relationships that you've had before. Do not allow those things to become final. Don't do it. Don't allow those to be final, and don't allow those to stop you from progressing. Don't allow it to stop you from going after what you want to achieve. Because again, failure is not final unless you stop. I wanted to push this as hard as possible because I know people, I know even myself, where there are times where I just didn't want to do it because I felt like it did not go the way I wanted. Like I can give you a plain example before I wrap this conversation up. Some years back, I had an opportunity to record my first EP. Being very honest, it was a dream of mine for years. I can even go back to probably being a kid, child, and saying that I wanted to be like this major singer. And I remember my bishop, actually, Bishop Holcomb, um, came up to me and we were having this conversation and kind of nudged me into recording my first EP. Gave me some guidance, some connections and different things like that, and we it was off. Like, now we about to do it. I remember going through the process of recording, and I remember going through the process of, for the first time, probably, well, probably the first time ever in my life, getting a vocal coach and trying to get my vocals to be, strong and this, and this, and, trying to make sure that I can do everything that I'm supposed to do to make sure that this is successful. Do the recording. In my mind, man, listen, I've done everything I possibly can. I've, you know, put the time in. I've done all of this rehearsal stuff and, all of these different pieces. And everything's done, sealed, created, graphics done. My wife creates the graphics for the cover, and I mean everything is done. Music created, out here on, all the platforms from iTunes to Spotify to, I mean, I'm out here, you know what I'm saying? And all of these things happen, and in my mind, okay, everything is done. I've put in the work. I've done this, and this, and this. So it's going to just blow. Like, this is gonna happen. Like, I'm about to be, moving. People gonna be calling me and trying to get me to come minister at the churches and this, and this. And I really, in my mind, going through the process, this is what I felt like it was going to do. Did not happen. Matter of fact, I it was some things that I did in the process that when it was all said and done, I felt like I failed. When it was all said and done, even when it came to certain qualities of the sound and this and this, I was like, man, see, I knew this wasn't gonna work. I knew I was just gonna fail at it. I knew I wasn't gonna be successful in this. And life happened, and certain circumstances and situations has happened between there and now. And I didn't want to do another CD. I didn't want to do no more music. I even remember getting to a point where I didn't want to even sing no more. Now, some of those reasonings was not specifically tied to the CD or the EP that I did. Some of it was other factors that has happened over time. So if I look at that from present, in my mind, I could say, which I have said to myself, when it comes to music, I'm not successful in that. I'm a failure in that. It did not go the way that I thought it should go. It did not happen the way that I thought it should happen. And honestly speaking, what I end up doing, I need to stop saying that, but just being transparent in this moment, I felt like I would never do it again. The experience was great. I enjoyed all of those things. I'll never do it again because I'll never be successful. And then here is the danger of where these, remember I told you on last time I spoke with you that that it becomes this thing where now between my thought process, my emotions and my belief system, it starts to become this cycle of things that repeat and give me evidence that what I'm feeling and how I'm thinking is accurate and real. And a lot of that comes from comparing yourself to others and seeing what others people are doing in their lane and not even asking questions of how they are able to get there, but just seeing this cycle of things happening around me, people, this person being successful and this person being successful and all of these different things happening. It becomes where it becomes then a conviction for me that I felt when it comes to music, I'm just a good dude that can sing in his car. I'm just a good guy that every now and again gets an opportunity to sing at his church, but I'm not an artist because in my mind, what I had started to believe about myself is I'm not good at that because I failed. I'm not successful in that because I failed. But through this conversation, you and I can realize it's not that you're not good. You just never evaluated it. You never just went back to see what happened. What was the reason why it didn't succeed? What was the reason why it didn't go the way that you thought it was going to go? And then some things we need to ask this real question. Was it supposed to go the way that you thought it was going to go? Were you supposed to be successful in that way? Or was it supposed to be, hey, this was an entry point, and then the next time you do it, as you continue to grow and develop in it, you then get to a point where then some things start to transfer and happen and situations start to occur. Like all of these things are a part of the process. But because I have felt like I was a failure, I didn't want to hear it. I had people coming up to me telling me all types of stuff. I think you're going to be great and successful, and I can see you da da da, and I can see you this, and this. And it was, but because I could not believe in me, I couldn't see what they were saying. It was a struggle to be able to see what they were saying because I had already said to myself, I'm not good at that because I failed. So now, re looking at this picture, I can realize and I can see spaces and places and things that I could have done better, that would have made the work that I did more effective, made the work that I did to be able to be more effective and impactful than I felt like it was. And then if I would have started looking at the perspective and looking at this picture, then also I wouldn't have stopped. I would have saw what did I need to do to be able to do it the next time and do it better than I did the first time. Developing it, making it stronger. I could have kept on in the journey, but the reason why I started to make it final is because I stopped. I had already concluded that I'm not strong in that. I had already concluded that I'll never be successful there because I failed, because it didn't happen the way I thought it was going to. So I had already concluded I'm not going forward with that. But I realize because of that, there are other things that I have concluded. If I'm not successful here, then maybe I'm not good at this. And maybe I'm not strong in that. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought here. And because now I start to question all other pieces, different pieces of my life, all because I said to this one area, I'm not good here. I'm not strong here. I'm a failure. And I made it final. So now I'm like, I don't think that was actually truth. I actually think I could probably do it again. And this time, do it better. This time, put some more work into it. This time, take my time with it. This time, have this type of insight and have these type of people. Like I'm looking at it differently because of the questions that I started to ask. And I realize this is not final. Yeah, it didn't happen the way that I wanted. It didn't turn out the way I wanted it. But it doesn't mean that I'm a failure in it. It doesn't mean that I'm not good. I'm not qualified. I'm not strong enough to be able to do this. No, it just means I didn't ask the right questions. So I hope this was helpful for you because it's helping me. Because there's so many things that I have put on the shelf, so many things that I have over the years of my life that I have done different pieces with and downplayed my own self, not believing in my own self, all because I felt like there were areas in my life that I failed at or it didn't turn out the way I wanted. And I made those things final. When all I had to do, being very honest, is just sit back, reevaluate, ask the right questions, investigate it so that I can know what things I need to adjust and make changes in so that I can become better and stronger in it. Because I now realize failure is not final unless I stop. I love you all, and I'll see you next time right here on the Focus on Greatness podcast. Talk with y'all later. Bye bye.